Getting started with Raspberry Pi. In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a camera easily with your Raspberry Pi. The physical setup is very simple. There's this flex cable that connects from the camera to the Pi. There's these little tabs that you pull up on the side, and you can see the little bits of metal in there. And those connect to the flex cable, and you can just insert it in there, making sure it's facing the right way with the metal on the metal part. And after you put it in there, you can just close the tab, and then you will have the camera connected to the flex cable. And you want to make sure it's even, not like that, to have the best connection possible. And once it's in there, it's pretty sturdy, pretty tough to pull that out, very durable. And then it also connects to the Raspberry Pi. In between the Ethernet and HDMI, there's another little connector area that has the same sort of tab connection. And you can just pull up on those tabs and insert the flex cable in the same way that you did with the camera, making sure, again, that it's facing the right direction. And you can just put it in, close the tabs. You want to make sure that they're fully locked, push them all the way down, otherwise you'll have your camera pulling loose while you're trying to use it, especially if you're using it on the go as a part of a robot or something like that. And you can see I can't really pull it out, and it's very sturdy, and that is it for the physical setup of your camera. It's just that easy. On the software side of things, it's also much easier than you might expect. You want to first of all update your Raspberry Pi using sudo apt-get update, and then upgrade after that's completed. It takes a little while to update depending on which version of the Raspbian OS you're currently using. But once it is updated, you can move on to sudo apt-get upgrade. And this one, if you haven't updated recently, will also take a long time. For this camera, there's no reason to update the firmware, but if you really wanted to, you could do that. And again, the command to upgrade is sudo apt-get upgrade. You have to do both update and upgrade in order to get it working. Once everything's upgraded, you're going to want to configure the camera using sudo raspi-config. Once you enter that, you will get a configuration menu, and you'll use your arrow keys to select Enable Camera, and then Enable, and then you will select Finish, and you will be prompted to reboot, which you must do for the changes to take effect. Using the camera is incredibly simple, although there are a lot of optional settings you can change so that you can get exactly the image you want. But this is the basic command you use to take a still photo, where img.jpg is the file name you want it to be saved to. To take videos, it's a similar format, raspivid-o, and then the file name you want to use. And in addition to that, you need to set the time. In this case, I'm setting it to record for 10 seconds. And it's also important to note that you need to use the .h.264 extension, because that's how the camera captures and compresses the videos. Similarly, for the still images, you should be using .jpg. By default, the images will be saved in whichever working directory you're currently using, so if you want to save to a different location, you can specify that file path in the command line. For instance, if I want to save in my folder that I've made specifically for camera images, I can specify that here by typing raspi-still-o./camera/image.jpg, and that will save it in the right location. Documentation for other specific settings for the camera, such as size and resolution, can be found on the Raspberry Pi website, and most of those settings can also be implemented directly on the command line. Viewing photos and images directly on the monitor is also fairly simple, although you have to download some extra software to view things most of the time. Sudo apt-get install FBI installs a basic photo viewing program called FBI. And there's a few different settings you can use to get the image the way you want it on the screen, but I'm just going to show you the basic one I recommend to view the image on a fairly small, normal size monitor. You just type sudo FBI and specify the file path. The -A keeps it from zooming in weird ways, and the -T1 stops a common error message that says you aren't using a Linux machine. There's another program you can use for easily viewing videos called OMX Player. This might already be on your Pi, but doing sudo apt-get install OMX Player will update the program to the latest version if you already have it, and install it if you don't. This one is also used very simply. You just type OMX Player and then the file path of the video you want to play, remembering the .h.264 extension. In this case, I had recorded a video that I just saved in the local file, and I can just play that in one line, and you should see it show up on your monitor. If you're taking a lot of pictures and videos, you might want to transfer them to your desktop so you can use them in any way you want. And you can do that with an SFTP client. In this case, I'm using FileZilla, which connects to the Raspberry Pi using the Raspberry Pi's local IP address, which means that the desktop you want it transferred to has to be on the same network as your Raspberry Pi currently. To download something, you can just go to the file location of the Raspberry Pi and select the image you want to download, and it will go to whichever file location you've chosen on the local computer. That folder on the left is where I chose to download the file to, but you could put it anywhere. This transfer process, of course, goes both directions and works with any files, not just photos and videos. With large files, it might take a while to transfer, and you can see the progress bar there. But after the transfer is successful, you can just go to your local computer, and you can view or edit the image any way that you want. And now you're all set up with your camera and ready to go. Thanks for watching.